In this video, we're going to be talking about two specific history databases: U.S. History in Context and World History in Context. And to access those databases, we're going to start at the Shapiro Library homepage at libguides.snhu.edu/home. From the left-hand side, you'll see a Quick Links category, and under that, the A to Z database list. And if I click on that A to Z database list, it'll bring up our full list of databases that we have access to. Now, because the names don't always describe the disciplines that are covered in the databases, we've divided them up into different subject categories. If you click on the All Subjects drop-down box, we can limit our databases to the specific subject that we want. In this case, we're going to limit to history. Beginning this list, you'll see the Best Bets category. So those are considered the best databases that we have for the subject area. And I'm going to cover those in a couple other videos later on. But in this video, I want to go into the two that I mentioned: U.S. History in Context and World History in Context. Now, they're created by the same company, so the look and the feel is pretty much identical. The content is a little bit different. So we'll go into U.S. History in Context, and it would ask me to sign in if I hadn't already done so. And in this, I can do a search up at the top for a specific person or event, but I'd like to go into Browse Topics. And so I click on that Browse Topics link in the upper left-hand corner. And from here, I can search by a specific decade if I wanted to see what happened in that decade. I could search by a person, or I could search by an event. In this case, we're going to go into the topic of women's suffrage. So as I click on the women's suffrage link, it brings up the page that has information pertaining to that topic. And the very first thing you can see is an overview of the idea of women's suffrage. And it usually will give you a timeline and some significant events surrounding that topic. And as we go lower on the page, you can see the resources are divided up by different category type. So we have academic journals, primary sources, featured content, reference, and as I scroll lower, you'll see some other kinds of information. So primary sources, we'll start there. Primary sources, you'll notice that the date on this, the first link that you see, is from 2007. Well, how could that be a primary source? Well, this is actually an excerpt from a speech that was delivered in 1916. So even though it's been reprinted from either a book or a website or wherever they got the speech, the actual speech itself is what's considered as the primary source. As we look a little bit lower, you'll see the 19th Amendment from the Constitution. So this is considered a primary source, as many legal cases or laws usually are. As we bump over to the academic journal side, these are generally going to be considered secondary sources in the field of history, because we're usually looking at somebody else's interpretation of events, or it's a scholar that's looking through many, many documents and giving you the interpretation of what has happened. So it's generally not something that the person has firsthand experience on. That can change based on the discipline. So sometimes you'll see original research that's done in the field, and that original research would be considered a primary source. But in this case, in the world of historical research, academic journals are generally considered to be secondary sources. We'll scroll past featured content and reference. You'll see biographies. So these are going to be biographies of notable people surrounding that event. Audio, this is pulling in from NPR and other audio podcasts. You can see videos, and so this looks like a video from the time of a parade that was, or a protest even, surrounding women's fight for the right to vote. And then images. And so those videos and images can also be considered primary sources, because they're giving you a first-hand account of what was happening at that time, rather than somebody else's interpretation. And again, we have news. So news can also go secondary or primary, depending on, again, if it's a first-hand account of what was happening at that time surrounding that event. So these are from the New York Times, USA Today, and the Washington Post, and I can see the dates. They're from 2016. So again, most likely secondary sources that are talking about women's right to vote. And then we scroll down and we get into the magazine category. And so you'll see magazines with a historical perspective as well. And so the thing I like about this database is that it lays out all these different subject, or I should say source types for you. And if I click on primary sources, you'll notice the little number next to it, 62. So there are 62 primary sources in this database talking about women's suffrage. I won't go into the World History in Context database because it looks exactly like this one. Again, the content is different because it's focusing on a different aspect in history, but it's the same concept there. So I hope this gives you a good overview of these two databases and how they can help you in your research. We'll be talking about different databases coming up in subsequent videos.